Who are they? Where do they come from? What are their agendas? Good morning, everybody. I'm Rocken Locken with Pleiadian Express Productions. I'm joined today with fellow admins of mine in the Pleiadians group, Jason Wilson in Singapore and Jane Hermstad in Norway. We're going to talk about a couple of famous cases today in ufology history and also get our thoughts regarding situations that surrounded them, as well as other things that have to do with the UFO community and disclosure issues. Jane Hermstad in the land of the all-time sun, how are you?
I'm fine, Larry.
Great. And Jason Wilson in Singapore, my brother, how are you?
Doing great over here, bro.
Great. I know that we were talking before the show, and we were coming up with some ideas and just, throwing some things around. And I know that the two subjects that came up in our minds were the fire in the sky story concerning Travis Walton, as well as Whitley Strieber's communion and his story and his ongoing story still to this day. And I think these are a couple of very fascinating subjects to talk about. And Jason, if you wouldn't mind starting off, I'd like to get your thoughts on Fire in the Sky and what your impressions of it were growing up. I know that we both watched this movie at one time, and we've heard all the folklore surrounding it growing up here in America, so I'd be curious to get your thoughts on it to start with.
Well, as I shared earlier, first off, I want to say infinite and unconditional love to everyone, infinite and unconditional forgiveness, infinite understanding, and infinite light to all the listeners. I was sharing before the show that if there are probably two movies that for me I would probably be hesitant to watch alone would be Fire in the Sky and Communion, and that's in a genre of different kinds of movies. But in terms of the actual story and the happening of the events, the Travis Walton incident, it is very interesting because of the specialists that were brought in to investigate. They did a little bit of background that he and another friend in their party were not getting along. They expected there might have been foul play, that Travis could have been seriously injured. And just the fact that he was gone for so many days, and when he finally came back, the medical examiner saw that he was emaciated, he hadn't been eating or drinking, the condition that they found him in. All of these things were very interesting and telltale signs of abduction.
Yeah, because like you were stating beforehand, I mean, there's really no way humanly possible that he could have got, I mean, food's one thing, and that's hard enough, but it's one thing to go that long without liquids, and even to be not dead, much less be in the fairly good health without any liquids was really amazing, and it really, I don't know what more telltale signs you need besides that one right there, that something was up, that something was a little unusual. I mean, that to me is the most interesting part of the story.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And then you have to imagine that he himself got hounded because of the number of investigators. They brought the FBI in. These are people who are being paid by the hour or on salary or what have you. Just the fact that they're down there investigating this, they don't want to be wasting their time on childish pranks. So he had to have these face-to-face interviews with people who are looking for little ticks, your eye movement during questioning, whether or not you're fidgeting with your hands, how comfortable or uncomfortable are you with certain topics of discussion. So these are people who are able to read the body language and the gestures that are said. And this, along with the other case that we hopefully will be discussing about Whitley Strieber, are two of the more fascinating cases of UFO alien abduction.
Yeah, and it seems like as the years go on with both these cases, I mean, the folklore with them, it never lets up, and then it seems to me like little bits and pieces change over the years too. Like, okay, at one point it was a negative abduction, then there might be some thought that it was a positive abduction, and then you start really looking into these cases and you realize that we have no idea, to be honest, what the agenda was. And I think that's what I'm starting to learn with paying attention to both these cases, especially Whitley's over the years, is that, it looks scary, okay, it might not have been so scary, but there's all these different things that have happened, and then it makes you more confused at the end because you realize we just don't have any clue as to what the agenda is with these situations, I mean, that's at least what I take from it anyway. And I know, we were talking with Jane before the show, and she's not too familiar, living in the Netherlands, sorry, Jane, living in Norway and Scandinavia. She's not too familiar with either one of these cases, but growing up with American roots, we're both extremely familiar with the folklore, at least of these two cases. And yeah, it just seems like it's really hard to get a feel for it. I know, being a Pleiadian incarnate, like I feel like I am, I don't really vibe with that kind of. They both kind of scare me too, to be honest, because I watched Communion when I was little and Fire in the Sky once, but Communion really scared the hell out of me, and I just don't vibe with it. But on the other hand, I don't necessarily think it was completely a bad thing. I think that it was just more agenda based, and I'd be curious to get yours or Jane's thoughts on that one.
Yeah, I just have a question for Jane. Is that Jane, when people are going through abduction experiences, and even though this is something that's very traumatic, they are brought back, correct? The people are brought back, and they're brought back intact in terms of, there's nothing that's no, they're coming back. If they've gone in the ship with 10 fingers and toes, they're coming back with 10 fingers and toes.
Well, yeah, as early on as, sorry to interrupt you, Jason, but yeah, as early on as Betty and Barney Hill in the early 60s. But yeah, go ahead. I mean, that's the case every time.
So that's why I was wanting to ask Jane about that and see what her thoughts were on that, and why take people in the first place and then bring them back. What does she think that they hope to gain from doing that?
Well, for the starters, there was a time when abductions was, say, allowed, sort of. It was done without the willingness or the permission. Some was abducted without their wanting it, and some were afraid also. And I think, yeah, as I said, it was a time when it happened, and it happened for various reasons. It was, I know that there have been planted chips in some people who were abducted, and the reason why they did so was to explore and gain knowledge from the human beings and how they were hybrids from other beings.
I think that's good, because I just wanted to say real quick, Dr. Roger Lear, the great Dr. Roger Lear, who passed away this recent year, he removed, I don't know, 17 or so alien implants from people, and he finally got to the point where he was just like, we probably should quit removing these things. I mean, they just come back, and they're really put into a person with intact. And then people will come back with the answer, well, that's so they can be tracked. That's so they can be watched. Well, let me tell you something. We have the technology almost with DNA now to follow people as it is. I don't think some civilization where he claims this material was coming from, this material that was implanted in him, it's something that's like 50 million years old, and it's got to be coming from a civilization about halfway across the Milky Way galaxy. So, I mean, I can't buy the fact that it's a tracking device, for one, and I can't buy the fact that it's just to mess with people, for two. So, yeah, I think, you're right on that.
Yeah, we have to know also that we are ascending, and what they are monitoring is also the way we are changing within our body in this time, because it is a very important time, and there is a reason why we are on this earth today. And it is pretty amazing how we can change in this density, how our body can change.
And over just a few years, really, relatively, a few generations, you look at these kids now that were born in the 90s, and Cryon talked about this, Barbara Marciniak talked about this, a guy named John White wrote a book called calling these kids Homo noeticus, that were born in the 90s, and these kids were born more open to everything. Their consciousness is just completely open. Their chakras are busted wide open, and they just know they really are hybrids. There's no more, say, There's very few of the separation now with these kids of a jock and a nerd or an athlete and a geek. These kids are both. These kids are very athletic and they're very brilliant at the same time. Plus, they're just all knowing. Even if they don't know, they know it. They know it. And how could they know? They know it because it's all they've ever known. Very old souls, very new to Earth, and it's amazing. So even with the races that you look at that aren't necessarily of the light agenda per se, it's like, okay, well, you take the Greys. I look at the Greys as maybe a burnt out human race that took that other direction and gave up their souls and whatever, their heart, whatever, for technology, but it could only go so far. Then you look at the Pleiadians, they took that other turn and advanced with consciousness and unity and collectiveness, and they don't really need to do that. So maybe the Greys are just looking for a way to get there, to save their race, you know, and to study us and to see what they could have done different. But, you know, that's just my take on it, and there's 50 million other opinions out there, and that and 2 cents will get you half a cup of coffee plus another 90 cents, you know.
Yeah, well, it's not allowed today to do such a thing. Still, we have to look at what age these people are who was having these implants in the body, because if you can see, I think you will see that the age of these people are around 40, 50 years. And what is interesting is the way they change, the DNA change, and yeah, that's very interesting, because you don't see many kids abducted and having implants in the body. So
Yeah.
what's interesting is to see the change within the people who are in their 40s, 50s, and how they change the body. And I agree with you, Larry. We shouldn't remove these implants. There is a reason why they're put there, and I don't think there is a dark agenda, a negative vibration to it.
Yeah,
The Galactic Federation is also having an agreement protecting this world, this age, and this Earth now today, and trying to not oppose upon our free will. As Sarah Brown said also, they are not allowed to be here. We didn't invite them. Then again, we have to understand also that these are also, some of these beings that are here, they were here long time before us.
well,
So
yeah,
we
and some
should
of them are
wonder,
us.
whose Earth is it? Who was here first? And then again, we have to see what's the agenda. This Earth needs positive vibrations to ascend. So I guess what Sarah means is that the Earth, Gaia, needs positive vibrations from loving beings with a light agenda to help Earth ascend.
Well, yeah, exactly. And we have to do that by all getting along and understanding each other's differences, just like, you know, the differences between cultures on Earth. I mean, if we can't even come together and start understanding those, how in the hell could we even fathom to guess what an extraterrestrial race's agenda is that's thousands, if not millions of years more advanced than us? And like Dr. Roger Lear said too, some of these races, they would have to lower themselves to even communicate with us. They probably couldn't even go down that far enough. I mean, it would take, I guess that's why they called some extraterrestrials angels in the Bible, because they had the ability to do that. But it's just so mind-boggling to think that we could even know, that we could even define what the word "it" means, much less anything from out there. I mean, we don't know. You can box it into, oh, they're all good and love, or they're all evil and it's all demonic, but I think that's the downfall of humanity, getting stuck in that trap. I mean, that's just, you know, I mean, I think that's just the bottom line of that part of it.
You know, you talked about the orbs, Larry, and we're also talking about all these spaceships that is being seen, and the videos I've been posting. There was a purpose with me posting these videos on the Pleiadians. These beings are trying to show off, just to let us know that they are here and they have been here for ages. And the way they change out there in the galaxy, in the universe, they're changing the form and the colors of their spaceships. And the question is also, how do they do that? How is it that they can be so advanced doing such a thing? And they're doing it to make us observe and to make us understand that they're out there. And if their agenda was to destroy us, they would have done so long
In
time
a
ago.
blink of an eye, or let an asteroid hit us, let a meteor hit us. They have stopped so many things from happening. And do you think it's by complete surprise that we haven't had a nuclear bomb detonated except for testing purposes since 1945? And I'll give you two guesses who let those two bombs off. But I don't think it's any coincidence that nothing has hit us and destroyed the Earth, or that we haven't had an all-out nuclear war. My suspicion would be, without Pleiadian intervention per se in particular, is that we probably wouldn't have made it out of the 60s, 70s, much less the 80s, without a full-out nuclear war here. That's just my take on it. I mean, or at the very least, human consciousness through incarnees that started coming here in the late 40s, early 50s, coming into fruition, because it just, the direction it was going, I mean, it just would have happened, and we would have all been divided over one or two BS issues, like the two political parties that aren't really two political parties in the United States are. So, it's just, people have to understand that, okay, whatever their agenda is, and people jump right to assuming that their agenda is negative because they, in their little small pea brain of a Earth mind, can't fathom what they would be doing here. So they get defensive, they get bent out of shape, and to me, I think the fascinating part of this whole thing is figuring it out. I mean, I'm on a quest, and I know you two are as well. We're on a quest to figure this out for humanity, for us, for Mother Gaia, for the galaxy, and for the universe. We want to know, but we want to keep an open mind with no judgment, yet maximum awareness at all times going,
I posted several videos the other day about chemtrails and how orbs are getting into they're gathering around massive, so many of them gathering around chemtrails and going into the chemtrail clouds and shooting off something, whatever it is. And it's very clear with the lack of the tools that we have, looking up to the clouds and seeing this happen, we can understand that something is going on. And why is that happening if it's not to protect us? And as you say also, Larry, if seeing on the Fukushima disaster also, if there was no one out there to help us, all the sea would be dead by now. It's millions of tons
it would be
waste coming out to the sea every day still.
Yeah, exactly. And the West Coast would already be so pelted and gross with all that. And I know what people are going to say. I'm going to catch hell for this. They'll be like, well, it's coming. It's going to be in our foods. It's going to be in our salmon that's showing up here. Okay, well, maybe some of that's going to happen and has, but I'll tell you what, it's not 5% as bad as it could have been without extraterrestrial intervention. And I'm just here to tell you right now it is. And people can disagree with that or whatever, but that's just how I feel about it. And I see it because I live here on the Oregon coast, and we sure as hell all these years later still aren't having any problems with it. I mean, and even if it was all on a slow raft here from Japan, I mean, most of it would have hit us right now before this point. And so people need to understand that there's help out there, and these orbs, these Pleiadian orbs, my contacts, they are up there dissolving these chemtrails like crazy on the West Coast. I know not so much inland, they're not getting to them as much, but they're doing what they can. And like you're saying, Jane, I mean, they're up there trying to clear this stuff up as far as I'm concerned. And even if I'm wrong, which, by the way, I'm not, we would already be decimated. I mean, you know, unless we want to sit there and think they're just playing some silly, foolish game and messing with us, which I think that's completely belittling and lame to think, because something on that high of an intelligence level, I don't think it's within them, even most of the evil ones, to think about doing that kind of shit. They have a bigger agenda that's done through different methods. It's not something that would be so transparent to us, you know.
Well,
There's different reasons. Yes, Jason, go on.
no, I wanted to say that well, that's exactly the kind of thing that we should ponder, because of the fact that they have a bigger agenda. Then they may not go about things in the way that we may think, you know, by brute force, or wiping out a species, or just coming in and dominating by brute force. They could be very subtle in tactics, and they could have a long-term agenda. Some things that from different circles that have gathered information about the Orion Collective, or what we would in general terms call the Greys, are interesting. And I think that this particular race of extraterrestrials has an agenda towards Earth that isn't necessarily in our best interest. But here's some things to think about. This Roswell craft that was down in 47 could go two ways. This could be a sort of Trojan horse, or a piece of candy that is offered to humanity. You wouldn't want to make it too obvious, so what you would do is you would have someone who would be willing to sacrifice for the greater good of your agenda, and they would crash this ship. It would be a piece of candy. The humans would, especially military people, just couldn't wait to take that and reverse engineer the technology. And before you know it, you've got fiber optics, you've got internet, and you've got a world that is more and more, quote-unquote, integrated and connected. And this is what actually starts us down the trajectory of singularity, in which humanity becomes that very race of cyborgs that Barbara Marcianic, may her secrets be sanctified, had warned us about. It's very possible that the Greys themselves are cybernetic beings. So it's not just a matter of coming in, because if there is a Galactic Council and the Federation of Light, then definitely there are people who are going to be playing by the rules, and there are people who are not going to be playing by the rules and have their own sets of agendas. It's just testing each other, testing each other's boundaries. You know, no one wants to precipitate an all-out open conflict, but we know that you're doing something, you know, behind the scenes. I mean, I'm sure other races take exceptions to, for example, this idea of walk-ins or even starseeds on this Earth. They may see that as a violation of certain principles.
Yes.
That Pleiadians would actually incarnate as souls. You know, like, well, what are you doing here? And if you can do that, then, well, we're going to do this. And the thing that's interesting too about the Waltman and the case with Whitley Strieber is that they seem very interested in the human soul and consciousness. And I've also wondered if because the time in which their activities started picking up, at least noticeably, because in an age of data recording and information, was during that period from the 50s on into the 80s. And what's interesting is also that's the time frame in which the DNA starts to change, and is as if they are starting, you know, to take analysis or start to see, oh, this is when the expanding DNA is going to start happening, or as if they're looking for someone, they're looking for a particular starseed to be born, someone or somebody who is going to revolutionize society. It's almost as if they're trying to anticipate exactly when and where something might happen. These are just some thoughts to share with you.
And you know, that's a good point too, first of all, in the Federation, because like you said, if there wasn't a matter of wanting to protect, and on the other hand, beings with maybe their own agendas, there wouldn't be a need to set up councils like this and to set up federations. It just wouldn't be for some title to have up there. There's a need for these things, and you're right about the time frame. You take from the 1950s all the way to the 80s. The 70s was a real hotbed. You had Fire in the Sky issue. You had, you know, Billy Meyer situation, and plus, you know, Jimmy Carter sighting. I mean, you had all these things come to fruition, and like you said, maybe this was a long-term plan, but to them, is it really so long-term to beings that are almost of a level and at a level where time happens all at once? It's not like we think of it in time. So really, it's just been, to be quite honest with you and quite frank, it's really just been a blink of an eye in time. You know, to them it's probably been the equivalent of just a few days or months to us. And yeah, I agree with you totally. And that's the time this DNA starts to change, okay, slowly. So you have the Blu-rays come around, then the initial indigos, these kids born in the 90s with the double helix strand open. I mean, these things all play into what you're saying, and I really love how you articulated that, because I think that's exactly what's going on. And if it's not, it's definitely what we need to be talking about to lead us down the right path, because it all jives too much in my intuition for there not to be something really big to it. And Jane, Jane, I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts on that are, on what Jason was talking about.
I think that you were talking about the Blu-rays and the new kids coming to this earth, and we have to know also that they're having a deep connection with what's going on with the alien ships, and what's happening also at the Galactic Federation, because they are the kids that has everything opened, as you said. They are measuring how we're doing on planet Earth exactly at this time. So they're a perfect, should I say, they're a perfect
Example?
people to be in between the humanity and what's going on with Gaia, because by them you can measure out how far we get, how we're changing, how we're ascending. And as if for the sea, there are alien ships also out in the sea. And
Yeah.
if there was not, I think all the sea, all the living beings in the sea would have been dead by now. So they're also helping out there. And looking at the time we're in now, with the Platonic belt and the placement of where we are placed in exactly the Earth, where the Earth is placed exactly at this time. Some are saying that there is not much time to ascend. Uh, Still, they're buying us time as we know time on this earth today, but they don't want to interfere with the free will, and they want to see how we are developing and how we are ascending towards this new era. Um, yeah, that's about it. I don't know.
Can I just say something about this, Larry? That the idea of free will. See, this is interesting too, because people will often like, well, why don't they just come down and assist and do this and do that? And the point that needs to be made about living in a free will universe is that by living in a free will universe, you can violate the free will of others.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's the point behind it. Hence, things like rape and holding people up at gunpoint and robbing them and so on and so forth. And sometimes even excuse me, you see amongst human beings people who will say, this is for your own good. I'm doing this for your own good. So you get parents who people might see them as negligent. So we're going to terminate their parental rights, and we're going to have state custody of the child. Or people who might have gone a little loopy, mentally. So now we're going to take away some of your freedoms. We're going to put you in this place until you get better. So we can't necessarily assume that just because certain agendas are not very dark and sinister doesn't necessarily mean that our ultimate flowering of expression, of culture, of views is going to be what dominates on this planet, especially as we take greater and greater interest in space exploration and going out into the stars. There are going to be some people who say, okay, you can do that, but you're going to also have to play by certain ground rules when doing that.
Well, yeah, exactly. Because any civilization that's already advanced to that level, they're going to make any other race that comes into that realm, or any other civilization, they're going to make them have to play by those rules, because they've been there longer than we have, and they don't want somebody who's not ready to handle that kind of capability up there messing around and causing trouble and just doing stupid things. You know, of course, there is a learning curve at that, but at the same time, you can't blame them for being cautious. And seeing what I would have seen on Earth the last, well, since our existence, really, I mean, I'd be very hesitant too to allow somebody like us with that kind of capability up there and doing, you know, doing that. And then again, we get into this separation of game of us and them. But is it really us and them? It's like on the planet we get into that. Well, really, we're all one race, and even if they're a different race from another civilization, okay, well, we're all part of creation. So, I mean, you know, how far do we want to go up before we stop dividing, you know? And then again, we're from the stars, I think. I mean, we weren't here first. Other races were here. I think that's pretty much a proven fact way before anybody got here, even the indigenous. So, you know, and Earth has started over probably God knows how many times, a few that we know of, and probably a whole hell of a lot more than that. And so, you know, you never can keep a closed mind to any of this. A person has to keep their mind open, expansive, yet aware and in their zone at the same time. But you just have to be open-minded in every scenario that you're in, because the minute you get into this doom and gloom or this paranoid thought or, well, it's just all lovely and rosy for sure, you know, that's when you get caught slipping. And, you know, we just need to kind of take it as it comes as far as I'm concerned, but try to unite as a race and try to unite as part of creation, you know, the best we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were wanting to also discuss a bit about Whitley Strieber, if I can mention some things, because this was for people who hadn't had the privilege to hear our impromptu conversation before going on air. Is that for those who don't know, Whitley Strieber, he is an author, and he writes a lot of fiction novels. So this right here, some people would have a red flag and say, well, you know, there you go. This is just another genre for him to draw from his vast imagination. Whitley Strieber was active in politics. He was also wrote a book which was quoted by members of Congress for nuclear non-proliferation, so we wouldn't have the proliferation of nuclear weapons. And Whitley Strieber was in upstate New York in his log cabin, in which he and his son in particular started to become visited by quote-unquote visitors. His son would wake up with some bruises on the arms, telling his father about how the doctors were there visiting him because this is what his son could relate to. They behaved like something akin to doctors and nurses. Then Strieber himself started to go through abduction experiences to the point of being taken on a craft and having different things injected into his mind. Now, what's interesting about Strieber's case is that he went to several psychologists, and they said this man has experienced what he says he's experienced. Whether or not that's from the subconscious, that's something else, because they're not going and giving a blanket endorsement of, well, you know, aliens and UFOs, but he did go and see these people. The other thing that's interesting is Strieber didn't go running to the media, you know, hey everyone, I got abducted by aliens, and you know, yeah, and I'd love to do a talk show with Larry King tonight about it. He was actually very reluctant to do that.
In a couple of years, it really did, and people will accuse him of being a charlatan and a glory hound, but that's not the case at all with Whitley. I mean, I just don't believe it.
Even when you hear him talk, and he's also very skeptical about this. He says, I'm not sure I'm going to be open to what this phenomenon is, but he's basically trying to say to people, don't take away from me my experience. I experienced this. You know, if you're walking through a dark forest and you feel something rub up against your shoulders, I know I felt something rub up against my shoulders. Whether or not that was a hand or a willow branch or the paw of an animal, I'm open to it. You know, but this is what I experienced, and I'm describing it, and this is how I saw and what I felt I saw. So that is a very interesting case. I read the book Communion and then seen the movie. Yeah, for the listeners out there, you might want to watch that movie while in the company of others.
Yes, please do. Yeah. Especially if you live alone in a remote area late at night and you want to watch it. Especially, you know, like you were saying in the pre-interview, of all people to play him, they used Christopher Walken, and that's kind of eerie. But I can remember when my stepmom was reading that book in the mid-'80s, and of course, I didn't read much of it. I saw the movie, though, and have since heard most of Whitley's talks he's ever given. But something about it was kind of creepy and eerie, and it still to this day is a mystery to Whitley, and he's putting together a lot of these pieces of what happened. I mean, he knows what happened, but I think the thing that's still a mystery to him when you hear him talk is that he's not even sure now of their agenda. But what he does say in a couple interviews is that once he got over that fear and started to kind of stand up to these beings or whatever, his life has gotten better, and if anything, they've kind of helped him. So, you know, take it for what people should take it for what they want, and either get freaked out by the movie or think it's bullshit or whatever. But you know, get past that a little bit and really look into this case. And, you know, it's very intriguing. I mean, and the thing about it, too, is here's the thing about Whitley's story. I've listened to interviews from him from the late 80s. I've listened to him all through the 90s when he was on Art Bell all the time. I've listened to him host his own show, which he does. And I've listened to all these interviews he's given to all these people, whether it's Art Bell, George Norrie, whoever. And his story is solid each time. It doesn't, you know, and people can say, well, anybody can memorize anything. No, bullshit. Every little idiosyncrasy, every little emotion, every little feeling when you put it out, and yes, I know, again, people will say, well, you can be rehearsed like an actor to do all that. No, because trust me, if he was that good, he'd be making a lot more money. He would be doing something else more. Trust me, there's more to it than that. And I mean, it's not even what he says, it's how he says it, you know.
I'm curious to ask if Jane has any famous abduction stories from Norway or your neighbors, Finland, Sweden, Russia, Denmark, anything in that area that has become quite known to people, and what were your feelings on that, if so?
No, I'm sorry, I don't have any any stories. Everything is happening seemingly out in the vastness of the world. No, there is no stories that I know of. Everything I know of is what I've seen in movies and been reading about.
Yeah, a lot of it, it seems like in the mainstream, is revolved around the United States. Of course, you do have the 1980 case in the Rendlesham Forest in England, where apparently some UFOs were seen and some aliens, and the U.S. military had a base right around that area, and people from the military have reported that, as well as one of the local constables, basically the equivalent to a sheriff over there. And of course, you've got the Billy Meyer case in Switzerland with Semyasi and the Pleiadians in the 70s, and we know about that. And I'm sure that there are a lot more. It's just that, you know, I haven't heard of them necessarily, and maybe, you know, other people that live in the Netherlands or Scandinavia or Europe could talk about it. But those are really the only two, to be honest, that come to my mind when I think of overseas. I think of the Rendlesham thing in 1980, and I think about Billy Meyer, but that really wasn't an abduction per se, not a bad one, but those are really the only two cases I can think of from over there. I don't know, Jason, doesn't it seem like most of them are centered around North America?
I'm a bit puzzled about people talking about abductions all the time. It seems like it's a bit negative. The vibrations from it is like wanting it to be something negative and thinking that, oh, it might be
It's almost like, yeah, it's almost like it's doom and gloom on one hand from them, but on the other hand, it's almost like, oh God, it's almost like you get from them, even the most paranoid people about it, it's almost like you get from them that they want it to happen. It's almost like, God, goody, I want it to, I mean, it's almost like they so want it to be real. On one hand, how terrible it is, but on the other hand, it's like some of these people really want it to be real. I know I had touched on real quick, too, in the early 60s, there was a case I'm sure most people know about, the Betty and the Barney Hill case, where they were coming home. It was a couple driving back to upstate New York. They were on vacation in Montreal in Quebec, Canada, in the province of Quebec, and they decided to come back late one night because Barney had to work the following day, and they wanted to come home and get a good night's sleep. He had to work the night shift, I guess, the next night. So they drove back. They were driving along this highway from, you know, Canada into New York, and they saw this craft stop in the middle of the road, and they were like petrified and scared. And then they got out, got in, drove back down the highway a little bit, got out again. Barney did, and then all of a sudden, their mind went blank, and they didn't remember anything till they were driving down the road a while. You know, nothing. Couldn't remember what the hell happened. And then all of a sudden, when they got home, they looked at their watch and they realized that a 1 or 2 hour drive took 4 or 5 hours. I think that's somehow the story goes. And so basically, it wasn't until they started having all these dreams and these weird, eerie dreams, and then they finally went to a psychologist or a psychiatrist that talked them through this. And he said the same thing like Jason did about Whitley's psychiatrist. They came to the conclusion that whether this happened or not, these people weren't lying about it. They really believed it happened. And here's the kicker about that story. Years later, Betty Hill was talking to a girl in the early 70s who was I don't know, she was an astronomy student or whatever, and she described a dream that she had talking to one of these beings who showed her on a map in the ship what the star system looked like. Now, of course, nobody knew back then what it was, but this lady kept listening over and over to her story, and she kept slowly putting together the dots on this map of what it looked like, of this star map, and it turned out to be the Zeta Reticuli, that it was Zeta Reticuli that this being was telling Betty where they were from, was, you know, what looked to be Zeta Reticuli, which is, of course, a stereotypical area where we think of as the Dracos coming from and the Greys and things like that. But I find that story very fascinating, even more so than Travis Walton's case, or even more so than, well, Billy Meyer's a whole nother topic, but I just find that story really fascinating. And this happened in 1961. So, you know, how long has this been going on, and then people just don't remember it, and, you know, but they have bad nightmares their whole life, and they chalked it up to just bad nightmares. So you just wonder how deep this goes, and then you need to go back no further than the dawning of time. I mean, this has been going on forever, all of this, you know.
But since you mentioned that, I would like for you, Larry, and for Jane to comment on what do you say about the naysayers who are like, well, this is all fine and well, but why the United States all the time? You know, why Canada or England? You know, why, you know, there's 1 billion people in China, 1 billion people in India. If you're going to take, let's say, random, of course, assuming you'd want to take random, maybe they are just looking at societies that are perceived to be more technologically advanced, so what makes them tick? So you get these people who say, look, you know, why don't they just go and pluck someone from Saudi Arabia, you know,
Angola.
Angola, right? You know, from Bhutan, or, you know, just some place like that. And, you know, of course, that's assuming that they haven't. We just may not have heard, or these people may not have recalled, or just haven't come forth about it because they themselves wouldn't know how their culture, their community would respond to it. So I'm curious your take on that, Larry, and I'd like to hear Jane's take on that as well.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and go first because I'm kind of foaming at the mouth about that. But yeah, I agree with you. Now, on one hand, yes, it could be the fact that in those particular cultures, okay, they're afraid to come out and it's shunned upon. Of course, where in the hell in the world isn't it's shunned upon to come out and say you've been abducted? Okay, so the thing with me is, though, and it was like this, I was reading, or actually before I did my first interview not too many months ago, I was listening the night before again to Bringers of the Dawn, which I've done 1,000,000 times, listened to it on audio, plus read a few times. And Barbara Marciniak started talking about the United States and how a lot of people were incarnated here in the United States. A lot of indigos, a lot of extraterrestrial souls were incarnated here because this was kind of, well, the new Atlantis, so to speak. This is where everything, this was the hub of the world. Americans, okay, I mean, but yet there's still a lot to learn, too. We're kind of this yin and this yang effect here in America. You could either have your biggest dreams come true in one day, or you could get your head blown off in the same day. I mean, America, everything kind of ticks out of here. So I think it ties in, too, with the incarnees that came to this earth and why they're all over the world. That's true. The majority of them, especially of the key ones, I truly believe were stationed at some point in the United States. I mean, that's just kind of my take on it in a roundabout way, and I would encourage anybody to listen to Bringers of the Dawn. And look out for that part of it where she's talking about America being like that. So yeah, Jane, I mean, I was kind of all over the board with that one, but what do you think? Why is it the United States and North America in particular is really prone to having most of these cases that are public folklore?
Well, you're both from America, and what the world needs to know is that USA is a very complicated area. For those who incarnated on that place in that states, um, they have to be pretty strong because there is so much to take in. There is the technolo technological aspect to it, and at the same time you have these ancient places with so much history, and you have the opportunity to live far away off the grid at the same time in a vibrant city.
Yeah.
So there is the polarity. It's so much. It holds everything. Um, but you were talking, Jason, about why is it only the Americans that we hear of? It is because I think so many people are not awakened yet, and those who are and traveling around the world a little bit, if they try to talk to the locals in the country they go to, you will see and get to know that there is a knowledge that is still today ancient, and they are familiar with it. So that's why they don't talk. They feel that this is normal. It's nothing mystical about it because it happens. It happens in when I was in Turkey just 2 weeks ago. I started talking with a guy, and I thought he was a Muslim, and I started also asking him about his belief systems, about what he was thinking about his religion and everything. And what surprised me was that he was all about the elements, the water, air, fire, and the earth. And that puzzled me a lot, and the divinity as well. I was stunned about that. And he was also very open. He said the rest of the people, Kurdic people, very open to the vastness of the universe, and they know what's happening. They know what's going on. They have lots of ancient places, history, and where they go to frequently. And they were not familiar. That was really surprising me also that there is not. It's not so long ago they had captured um, alien spaceships or whatever it was, a bright light just um, shooting into the sky all of a sudden. It was over Doom, and it was just shooting into the sky. And he didn't know about it, but he was familiar with the thought. It was quite okay for him. It was not, seemed like it was not surprising even. So I think we need to start talking to people. And what Larry did, when you, Larry, opened the groups, the different Pleiadians groups all over the world, you are expanding and also uh, opening up for other people to talk about these things. And I think we will be very surprised what's coming up if we trigger it.
I think so. We're kind of like the spark that ignited the sport, so to speak. And yeah, Dr. Roger Lear, in fact, was over there a year or two ago during a lot of these sightings in Turkey, and they would come in the middle of the night around 2 to 4 in the morning, which is when they're really prevalent in the location that I'm at. and you know, they'd give signals back and forth to the people on the ground, and do move certain ways if you kind of willed them to through your consciousness, wanted them to. So I mean, the evidence just is overwhelming, and I think it's what you touched on too is great, because to a lot of these locals, this is all old hat to them. Okay, especially in the East, you know, India, places like that. It's no big deal. They're used to star beings, and they know that this goes on. And even if they've never heard of it, like that gentleman you were speaking to, it really wasn't a surprise to him. Okay, in America, it's so sensationalized. Plus, you know, our movies go all over the world and things like that. So, you know, it's just it's all relevant.
You know, those are all good, very good points. And you know, if you were to look at it from the point of view of, I think it's Zechariah Sitchin, is it? I mean, you could argue that in actuality, they were. Yes, Larry.
Nothing. No, I was just coughing.
Just that he could make the argument. Well, the best documented cases are in some of your religious text. You know, who do you think that was coming down in these flaming wheels of fire and speaking to these people and so on and so forth? I mean, if you can believe that these were extra-dimensional beings, okay, there you go. Extra-dimensional, you know, is outside of Earth. It's extra-terrestrial. It's outside of terra firma. It's outside of Earth. So you could look at that, and then I'm sure both you and Jane have seen Google images of Earth at night, and you can see which places of the planet are actually lit up like a Christmas tree, and which places of the planet are completely pitch black. So let's look at this from a different angle. If you were coming here and you know you were quite pleasantly surprised and very amazed, or maybe even a bit intimidated, what have you, there's a planet that's teeming with life. Well, you've got all these objects even before you get into the orbit that are of interest. Oh, what are these? You know, metallic objects that are in the orbit going around the planet. So you could actually do an analysis and see who is actually putting these up there. You know, countries are putting these things up there for telecommunications purposes. Then which of these are more advanced? Which countries are putting up those which are more advanced? Which ones are putting up things up there that have dual applications? It may have interested them that the United States of America probably has more up there that has military applications. So, okay, out of all the people on this planet, if any one of them could actually control the dialectic or the course of the human history, which one of these people on the planet are more warlike or more prone to war? I mean, we're looking all these up here, and not all of this is about broadcasting the Cosby Channel. You know, we've got some stuff we're checking out, and this looks like this has got some very nefarious purposes to that. So let's go check these people out. So you go down there and you take random test subjects, and maybe they're not being implanted per se, but one thing that's interesting is that you would want to have a control group that you would monitor if you were doing a series of tests and experiments, just like if you're wanting to reintroduce pandas in the wild after they have been hunted down, you would have a few of them and you would tag them. You know, human beings even do this with mammals and different things. You know, we will tag fish, we will tag different things to actually monitor, you know, how are they doing out in nature, how are they interacting, how are they thriving. So it is possible that these particular implants, if this is what's going on, could be a form of monitoring a control group and seeing what's going on and what's progressing with them. Any thoughts on that, you guys?
Yeah, no. Actually, Jane, do you have any thoughts on that? You can go ahead and go first.
I thought that was excellent explanation of explaining why they are shipping, putting implants into people to explore and monitor how we're doing and how we are ascending. That was I tried to explain that, and that was to make people understand why we can see how we do it on animals. And I thought that was that's great, Jason.
Yeah, very brilliantly articulated, Jason. And I really like what you said too about, okay, so they're up in space, they're approaching this beautiful planet at night. whatever, and then you look down and you see what's lit up. Well, okay, yeah, you take a look at Russia, for example, the old Soviet Union. Yeah, it's the most vast land in the world, but they've got the smallest population per square mile. And the technology is probably not that great in some places, so it's not very lit up. And then you start heading towards the North American side, and especially up towards, the Western Hemisphere, but up towards the north, where you've got the USA and Canada. And, Canada is pretty densely populated, but then you've got this country, okay, with a ton of big cities, plus a ton of other smaller cities that've got over 100,000 people in it. So, and everything here is just go, go, go all the time. So it's lit up. I mean, we're lit up like the 4th of July here, probably, compared to any other landmass in the world, at night especially, or in the dark, per se, from space. I guess, it depends on what part of the world you're in, where it would be day or night. But so it really ties in, plus all the communication systems up there. And although all countries have them, the United States is loaded with them for both technological reasons and for both military reasons and God knows what else. So it's a good point, and I think Jason articulated that well, and so hence this ties into that, okay, and the number of incarnates that have been here. It's all relevant, and it just, even just on those few issues alone, it's no wonder why the United States might be their most popular destination, at least, from the way I see it. And then again, too, in these other parts of the world, okay, well, their culture is of such that it's kind of old hat to them, where maybe it's not talked about, but some of these things are just understood, and they're more in connection with not only Mother Earth, but they're also more in connection with the cosmos because of that reason. And so it certainly is an interesting paradox for sure.
And they might feel that... Go ahead, Jane, please.
I have some thoughts about... I was sitting here thinking how I would love Jason to tell me a nighttime story, because I love the way he explains. You explain things, Jason. I'm going to have a go on it. If you are sitting on a train that's going to a far away place, and you met someone you knew on that trip, who would you rather talk to? Anyone you didn't know, or would you have a conversation with the people you know? It's the same way with the aliens and the ships, and how they're interacting with the world and how they know it. In Turkey, as I know, they were not surprised by the encounters in the sky. That's because they have it frequently. They're so connected to the history, and they're so connected with the earth, and they're so connected with what's going on out there. So I think the reason why they are frequently also visited is the fact that they don't have the monitoring system, and they interact with the kind of people who are open to it and not too surprised. The video that I was posting 2 days ago or the other day about that was about a golden orb. There was a guy filming this golden orbs. It was 2 of them, and he was shouting all through the video. And I was so stunned about that, because if that happened to me, I would see myself, I would imagine that I could see myself speechless. I wouldn't have shouted this way. I would be scared of, I would be more afraid of these orbs going away if I shouted. I don't know what's your take on it, but this is I was surprised having a close encounter like this. It's very strange that they were screaming so much. What's your take on it, Jason?
I mean, maybe they just had this the sense of fear, because it is interesting to see how in subject object how people interact with different things. I mean, let's just look at us again, what we're more familiar with. Some of us are comfortable with holding spiders and snakes, and some of us are not. Um, I myself was in the habit, when I lived in the state of Michigan, I would go into the forest and camp there for a few days on end at night by myself. And a lot of people don't do that, but I had no problem with doing that. I felt very comfortable. I felt actually more safe in the forest than I would in an inner city, to be honest with you. But it is interesting, and then some of that could be, again, what they're doing. In particular, the Orion Collective, or what is termed the Greys, is to study the psychology and psychoanalyze humanity. But if they had different objectives, I mean, this is interesting, because how the old oral tradition predates, the written record. So if you got this person who goes off, imagine the person who first encountered an elephant and how huge, and it might have been seemingly terrifying to them. So they go back and run to the village, and it's got this long in the front and the horns, and it's so big, and and it just and then so it served its purpose, or think of the person who first encountered a mamba, so it spreads fear throughout the village. So if their purpose was sinister, again, we have to assume that they think differently than what we do, and their approach may be different. Just like enough to abduct a few people, put certain images in their mind, and just have them go and spread this message to popular culture via the oral tradition. They're going to go on all these different talk shows and spread this knowledge, so it gets embedded in the subconscious of people. These are some possible approaches.
Yeah, no, exactly. And you brought up a good point. And they know that by doing this with certain people, that some of them, may not talk, they may clam up, they may not have anything really to say, but they realize that a lot of people are going to go tell their story by whatever means they have to, whether it's through newspaper media, whether it's through talk shows, or now especially with the medium of the internet. They realize that there's all these outlets for them to vent and to tell their story, and en masse now, people that had never were able to, only maybe through TV or radio or the newspaper. They realize now that you have all these other places where you can go and even tell your story somewhat anonymously and get it out there. And so hence, the numerous stories that I almost hear on a weekly basis from people about abduction scenarios or things that they've encountered in their dream realm or that they've seen in the sky. And and really most of them I really truly believe, because most of it's shit that you couldn't just make up. I mean, if you had that big of a mind to make this shit up, you'd be writing movies in Hollywood. So and then you look at what they're trying to gain out of it. Okay, most of them aren't wanting any money out of it. They're not trying to gain fame. Okay, well, if they're going crazy, then, a third of the world's going crazy. So these things are all relevant, and, and they know that these extraterrestrials have to be advanced enough, even the lower formed ones, they have to be advanced enough to realize that that's what we're going to do with this kind of information.
I think that showing up, that the extraterrestrials is showing up, is a way of testing how you perceive it, how you go about with it. There is negative ways of reacting, there is positive ways of reacting, there is wows, and there is so many ways. As you say, also you can earn money on it, and there is that is a way to monitor also what's our reaction and how do we want to go about with it, how we are ascending. And I think it's very important to understand that to ascend in this way is also getting away from the money system and getting closer to nature. At the same time, they want to show off. They want to show us that they are there for sure, and they're not going away. They want people to not be scared, not be afraid. They're showing off more and more in different shapes and forms. Um, it is to let us know and to let us have the feeling of that they're not supposed to be scary. They're supposed to be helping us.
So, Jane, what would you say is the Arcturian agenda on Gaia? What would you, just a general idea of the Arcturians' presence, and what is their relationship with Earth and their intention towards Earth?
The Arcturians they're also close to Earth, but not as close as the Pleiadians. They're more observative and closer to the Galactic Federation and upholding the agreement to not interfere this much. They will stop anyone who is trying to interfere in a negative vibrational state. They want us to ascend in order to ascend themselves. We have to know that they're sending the vibration and frequency on this earth is too low for them to get down to our level. Is a very difficult task, being in such a frequency as they are. But there is people on this earth that is of the Arcturian race and origin, and they're trying to have contact, telepathically contact and vibrational contact with the beings, with the humans who are on this earth today, to ray out love. It is of the most importance that we stay in this vibrational state, because the ray of light and the ray of love is very strong, and it's expanding, it's rippling off to the extent of having this sentient progress in a faster way. But yeah, they're staying there in the background and following, observing this very closely, and they're making sure that nothing is going to happen. Nobody is going to interfere in a negative way. So if that happens, they will attack, and they have.
I know Larry wants to jump in here. I just wanted to say that I thought it was interesting that Jane said that for the Arcturians, that for them, our ascension is their ascension. So in other words, the part is only as good as the whole. So that was interesting. Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it even matriculates to a middle point than that. I think that I would almost liken it to this. Okay, the Arcturians are kind of like a grandfather type of a humanoid race to us, whereas the Pleiadians were kind of like a parent race to us. And I know people give a 50 different million variations and takes on that, but the history, as far as I understand it, is the Arcturians helped guide the Pleiadians past all their problems, the intergalactic wars with each other, and the millions and probably billions of years it took for them to ascend and to get to that level where, okay, everything was about the collective and as one, instead of all for just one. And I think the Arcturians are just kind of a guide over all of this, and they're kind of guiding the Pleiadians along as well. And every race has another ascension level to move to. I think the Arcturians are just about at oneness, though, with the source for the most part. But there is still some levels of Arcturians that are trying to ascend, just like the Pleiadians are trying to move up into the higher dimensions from higher dimensions compared to where we are, and then of course Earth humans are trying to get to that place where the Pleiadians have been for millions of years, hundreds of millions of years. So you're right. I think the Arcturians realize, and the Pleiadians realize it too, for the most part, that they're only as good. Without us, there can be no them. Without the Arcturians, there can be no Pleiadians, and so on and so on. And for whoever a quintillion years ago came here or came to this galaxy and seeded the Arcturians, whatever human race that was at the time. So I think this is all about a humanity, a humanoid connection. When it comes to that particular lineage, when you're talking the Lyrans, the Arcturians, Pleiadians, Syrians, as well as Earth humans. And then, of course, incarnations tie into here as well. So hence it makes you wonder, are we the Pleiadians from the future coming back to make sure that Atlantis doesn't happen again, or that Atlantis doesn't happen, period? I think these are all, then you get into the timeline issue, which I think hence is another thing in the time we're in right now. We're kind of in this period where I think all these timelines and all these parallel realities that we all exist in, they're all kind of coming together as one, and maybe that's how a planet ascends at that point. Maybe once they get to a point where all their timelines come together and everybody unites instead of divides, maybe that's part of the ascension too. And then maybe we're just a big mothership traveling through this galaxy. Who knows? But I think that all these things are a reality in some parallel world, and hence all these ideas and puzzle pieces are coming back together. Hence, I'm all over the board again, but that's kind of how I think that it works. Everything is at a now moment. Everything's interdimensional, and everything is all at once, and in and out, and back and forth, and up, down, and all points in between.
Do you think that it would be? I'm going to ask you this, Larry and Jane. For those people who think that the aliens, different sentient civilizations travel, great distances just to come to Earth to sexually exploit a few people. If that's what you felt, do you think that would conflate your ego? Like, out of 9 billion people, they chose me to to touch in that way. Would that put you on an ego trip? Like, wow, like I must be so hot.
Yeah, I would. I mean, the way to answer that is yeah, because in reality, a lot of people, they fear that or whatever. But I mean, it's kind of arrogant to think that way too. On one hand, because if you think that you're that special, that they're coming for you or a particular race from, God knows how many light years away. To them, light speed is nothing. I mean, it's like crawling like a turtle to us. So, and of course, it gets into the fact where there's wormholes and portals and teleportation. So who knows exactly how they all travel? I'm sure it's various ways depending on the advancement of their civilization. But at the same time, I mean, to think that they're coming here for anything less than, well, maybe self-agenda reasons. Okay, I can see that. But that they're coming here for anything just to mess with us or to rape somebody on Earth, I mean, I think that's pretty arrogant. Pretty arrogant. And I laugh too, because it's like, even you take these people that are scared shitless, okay, boo hoo hoo. The thing about it is okay, well, I feel for them, I really do, but at the end of the day, you got to think to yourself, really, that's what they're here for. So part of the fear and why they get fed on by energy vampires is because they don't have the consciousness to see past that it's just doom and gloom for them. They don't see that it's on such a big agenda level that even the brightest mind on Earth can't even begin to fathom what it would be for. They just think that they're a target, and if they think that they're that special to be a target, it's crazy. Because on the other hand, those same kind of people have low self-esteem and are always talking themselves down, but yet on the other hand, they think they would be so special that some evil race from 1 trillion light years away is coming for them. They're coming. They've been coming since the 1950s. They're coming to get them. It's like some bad movie.
So Jane, do you think that these beings have just come to Earth to have some? I mean, what do you think about that? Some, just a one-night stand with some, one-night stand with someone from some log cabin in upstate New York, and then they're out of there, or what do you think?
When it comes to sexuality and the extraterrestrial beings, we have to understand that the interbreeding and the creation is different than the sexual experience and the sexual the way um, um, the way you experience the sexuality, because sexuality to them is a spiritual um, it's a spiritual experience, really. um,
I can tell, Jane, you're getting tongue-tied. You're thinking of some hot Nordic coming here, some Nordic dating coming here, like Jason says, for a one-night stand. They'll be like, "I'm a man. I'm a one-night stand." Yeah, I know it's an exciting thought, huh? In a way.
in order to be in that state of mind that they are, you have to understand that the sexual experience is going to be a spiritual
Right.
experience, and not into breeding. That is different. That is done in a very different way. They don't interbreed with the way we do. Their creation and their making of other beings is not the same way as we do it today. They're not born in the same way, and it doesn't take that long time for a being to be created and born. So that's a very different way of seeing it. Um, the way we do it now is
They laugh at the way we do it, actually. I've
yeah,
heard some Pleiadians talk about that, and they kind of laugh at it because at their ascended level, okay, if somebody's together and they decide they want to be partners, whatever, however they do it on that kind of level, it is spiritual purely. And I think that most of us that are kind of going through that ascension right now, to us, it's becoming the sexual part, whatever, just the getting off is like, okay, well, that's that. But I mean, to us, it's like a spiritual thing, even to us now, to where we look at it like that is almost a oneness with somebody you love and wanting to create that bond. And to them, it's got to be completely that way. So when you think about the way that they reproduce, a Pleiadian human civilization is probably done through through DNA samples of the two parental beings, if you will, and it's done in a way where it's not like, okay, it's a technology they can handle. It's not like on Earth where you've got all these black laboratories around the world that are producing God knows what, mixing God knows who with what and when and where and what animal with this, a giraffe with a goat, and who the hell knows. Um, I think that they know how to handle that technology, and that's how it's done. And I have to go with those ridiculous examples because you'll get people going, "Oh, cloning, oh, this, ooh." Well, cloning is life, okay? I mean, but when you know how to it's one thing when you have a technology and you're irresponsible with it, but it's another thing altogether if you have any of those technologies and you're responsible with it. It's a yin and a yang completely.
yes, exactly. I don't know where to start, but
How about that
there.
hot Nordic guy?
Well,
How about that hot Nordic alien that's on your mind?
oh, I don't have that in my mind at all. I was just thinking about the creation and the sexuality you were talking about. The some extraterrestrial beings, when they create another being, that's not allowed to do for anyone. Uh, or any person or any being. It's like there is some beings that do that and are experts on it, and it doesn't take too much time to do it, but they are not the ones who is bringing this um, quote unquote children up. They're not allowed to bring them up and teach them things. That is the uh, how should I say it so people understand? That's more like the grandparents doing, because that is a task in itself to do. It's seen as a very, very important task to teach these new beings um, how to expand and explore and yeah. that is not within the creation in itself.
Well,
So
hence,
they're left over to the beings who are specialists in taking care of bringing up these beings.
well, and that's not too far off from how, like we talked about, how tribes and indigenous tribes raise children. The community's involved, the elders are involved. They get involved right from the start of being influences in the lives of these children. And of course, these are the same indigenous areas where they're more in touch with the cosmos per se on a consciousness level, and it's just a given to them that these things exist out there. So those races that are in touch with their planet, in touch with their community, in touch with the rest of the cosmos, and I mean that's kind of in a way the approach they take to raising their children, and that come along in their community. Now, of course, they're still doing the breeding like we do here on Earth, of course, but it's kind of the same philosophy once the child is born in indigenous communities and in some Eastern cultures, versus here in the West.
I posted a picture of how we can see how it's done. It's done by two people in a deep, deep, concentrated, meditative state, and it takes, if you can imagine, it takes around half an hour to do so in a very deep, concentrated state of mind,
And what are
and
you talking
only
about?
on that creation, creating new beings.
And it takes
And
30
that's
minutes.
about, if you can imagine this taking about 30 minutes, and that's an agreement between two beings that are experts in doing that, and that is their task, because they know how to do it,
So
and
you're
this is an
saying that
agreement.
you're saying
Yeah.
that I wouldn't have to be a 60-minute man anymore if that was. I could knock that down into 30. I am getting kind of old, but yeah. No, I get what you're saying completely, and I'm sure that it's done. I'm sure that it's done that simple on an ascended level like that. It's.
And you put everything into it, the
Yep.
way that it is done is, it's done with pure love, and it's done with everything you can put into it, also sexuality, but that is not the main thing. About the sexuality is left more out of the situation, because that is an exploration in itself, and it is a way of exploring and expanding and observing and getting to know and going somewhere, and we can hold the vibration and the frequency of where they are going in a sexual act, because that is too high. That is an ecstasy too high for what we can hold.
Yeah, it's too much light. It's like I've heard
Yes.
people talking about their astral travels to Pleiadian planets and things like that, and it's gorgeous, beautiful. They don't want to leave, but the love by vibration and literally the light is almost too much for them to handle at a certain point. And like you're saying, the ecstasy is so high that it would probably some of that would probably just blow our hearts up in a second if we weren't ready
Yes.
for it. I don't know, Jay. Will, bail me out here? What's your thought on that?
On the ecstasy and the vibration.
Yes, sir.
I mean, it's. I mean, even if you look at going outside, and this is something our friend Hank could speak about, and a shout out to Hank, love and light to him,
Much
is
love
sun
to you.
gazing. Yeah, much love to you, Hank. Sun gazing. So there is a light that you can look at, and when you look at it, it also beholds a majesty. So when you look at yourself, it's almost a mere reflection of yourself, and realizing your own impurities and your own things that your own thoughts and your own hands have sent forth, to be able to see that, and it's so awesome and amazing, and in a complete state of absolute rapture and bliss. And I'm speaking this from experience, because I had a light worker and a healer work with me over some past traumatic lifetimes, because I was, before my soul found a home amongst the Pleiades, I was with a group of beings that were not aligned to the light, and that was a very challenging and difficult struggle. But when you come face to face with the light. It's just so. Am I still there, or did I drop out?
No, you're here.
Hello?
You're here, Jason. Jason, you're here. Jason. Hello? You're here. Hello? Ground control.
Okay.
Ground control to Major Jason.
Yeah, is this clear?
You're clear.
Okay, so it's coming face to face. Okay.
Now you're cutting out again. Must be the cabal again. They love messing with our broadcasts. Jane, are you there?
I'm here, Jason. Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Huh.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I was just hoping on a wing and a prayer. I see Jason in the room, but he must be having issues with his mic again. And I was really looking forward to, and hopefully he's going to come back in here in a second. But I was really looking forward to get his take on that, because he was right what he was going into about the sun gazing. There's a certain bliss from being that in touch with nature and that in touch with something like the sun, and to make that conscious connection with the sun, as well as even the moon at night. But the sun is so powerful and it's so overwhelming that, you know, you can only handle it in small doses at first, you know, and it takes a build-up to get used to that.
I want to say something about that, because we don't have so much sun in Norway, and we don't have that opportunity as you have. But I want to say to the listeners that are maybe thinking the same way as I am, how do we get to the connection of and ground to having the same experience, that getting the energy and getting more energy. We are supposed to ground, because all the energy coming down to us today is going into Mother Earth, Father Earth, and the way we can do it in the places where we don't have all that sunlight and all those rays are grounding to the earth, so we can gain all the energy that we need from Gaia. And being close to the nature, sitting on the ground, meditating, close to the water and close to the woods are one of those things. And if you cannot sit on the ground because it has been raining for a long time, you can sit on a branch in a tree and get the same energy out of it. So relax, everyone who's living in a country with lesser sunlight. You can ground, connect with Gaia in this way, and you will be fine. You will gain energy enough.
That's a good point, Jane. When you were starting to talk about that, I was trying to think to myself, okay, well, you know, you live somewhere where there's not a lot of sun, and then right before you said that, I was thinking, you know, go make a connection with a tree, go out into the forest, you know, look at a lake, look at whatever, go out into nature, wherever you're at, try to get out into nature somehow, and connect with that once in a while, even if it's just a quick walk through it first, and you know, and take your chances when the sun does come out. You know, take as much advantage as you can, you know, over that.
Yeah, you know, we do have summer. We do have a time of year when it's summertime, and I do want to shout out to everyone. Take off your shoes, take off your socks, and connect with the earth, and go into the grass and just connect. For the time that you do that, it's a great connection. And if you start getting cold, put on your shoes again and your socks again, and try to connect with the earth through the trees. Sit on a branch, climb the trees, relax in the trees, be one with the ground. Yeah.
Exactly, and I think that all ties into too grounding like that. I mean, it ties into both getting more connected with Mother Earth, and I think that you get more in tune with the cosmos as well by tuning into Mother Earth and to Gaia and to being at one with your own surroundings and your own environment in a natural way. And I think that hence propels you to have a deeper connection, whether you realize it or not, with the cosmos and with our galactic family and the star beings that are out in the sky and whatnot, in our clouds, in our skies at night, posing as stars that lay real low and blink all kinds of pretty colors. I mean, I think it's all one and the same, and so above, so down below, so in the middle. It's all relevant and it's all oneness. At the end of the day. And I'm wondering if Mr. Jason is back with us. I see him in the room. Do you see him in the room, Jane?
Yeah, yes, I see him in the room.
Yeah, I typed to him, and I don't know. We're always having this technological issue, no matter if it's me and you. Yeah, now you're back, brother. Okay, the platform is yours. Okay, you got the floor.
Can you guys just remind me again, what was it that we were on about? Because we were on the cloning and then the sexual reproduction.
Right, and then you were talking a little bit, I know we had mentioned talking about Hank and the sun gazing, and I had talked about kind of oneness with source and about breeding on a higher level and things, not breeding, but Jane and I were talking about how they reproduce, in the higher dimensions through, consciousness and maybe through, DNA extracts and, and all that. Now I've kind of lost my train of thought too, but, the sun was what we were talking about last.
I think I was trying to use an analogy of just how challenging it is for you to open your eyes wide and take in the light of the sun, because you were talking about that experience with the Pleiadians and the Pleiades collective on a intimate level, or even if it's not on an intimate level, just in that sense of being surrounded and being embraced by this pure, all-encompassing love and light. It is a very overwhelming experience, but something that is just pure bliss, is just absolute bliss. And I think that once a person taste of that bliss, and realizing that you can even go further when you're talking about source, it's just, it is amazing. You can do a whole talk show on that alone.
No, I agree with you totally, and you get in touch with that, and the more you get in touch with it, the more that you realize how exciting it is, and that this is just the beginning. It goes on and on and on from there, and at the same time, you have to take precautions when you start sun gazing. You have to get yourself grounded. It's best not to have your shoes on. And it's best to kind of ease into it, maybe keep your eyes closed for a little while you're doing the sun gazing, and slowly open your eyes. And the more and more you do that, the longer you can do it for, and then the more bliss that comes to you, and the more that you can get accustomed to handling,
Did you guys talk at all about the, is Jane speaking now?
Yeah, Jane. No, Jane is not. Jane is off mute now. Jane is here. Yes. Did we speak of what?
Okay, I was asking if you guys had talked about, because we mentioned about the Greys. We talked a little bit about the Octarians. We all know why we as the Pleiadians are here, and then did we get in a little bit about the Reptilians and the conflict that ensued between the Reptilians and the Pleiades, because this is something I think is very important for the Pleiadian community, and to know something about the backdrop of that. Do you guys, while I was away?
No, we didn't. I have touched on it before in a video that I did, but I accidentally deleted it. And I think I touched on it a little bit earlier, where I kind of likened it to the Pleiadians being kind of an ascended race of humans that took the right direction as a collective, as humanity, and then all of a sudden they started developing technology through consciousness instead of manipulated mind control and being doled out technology, here and there, like the Greys were, and eventually giving up their soul and mind to be part of this technology. And no, that's about all I touched on, but I think it's very important that we do touch on it at least this one time, to let the Pleiadian community know just exactly what it's all about. But Yeah, go ahead, man. You were on the right track there.
Well, when you first read what we were talking about before, "The Bringers of the Dawn" by Barbara Marcianick, and then after that you get into "The Keys to the Living Library," and you kind of feel that there was a 180 or a huge turn that was done there in terms of the narrative. But what she's talking about there is when she mentions the tyranny that was let loose, is that when the project for the Living Library, this jewel, radiant jewel that we call Earth, Gaia, um, was that not everybody was in particular included in that project, and there are many different sentient civilizations that have, evolution has favored different courses on different planets. In some planets it's favored mammals, in some planets it's favored reptilians, it's favored insects, and so forth. And on this planet in particular, if things were left according to the natural direction, in reality, the reptilians would be, or beings that would be of a reptilian descent, would be the ascended race on this planet. But what happened was when the project of the Living Library came together, it was mammals that were chosen. And what happened was when the reptilians, or those that you can say kind of were evolved from that line, they were like, we're not really digging this, and we're not really liking that, and that is part of how the conflict ensued between the two, and why they also feel that they have stake in some of this. And when they came in, they were the ones who rearranged and changed the DNA. Notice they didn't just come in and obliterate things, but they just came in and sort of like, we're going to be the new overlords, and this is what we're going to do. And there's no more worse insult than, can you imagine if you had two rival kingdoms, Larry and Jane, you have two rival kingdoms. So I take Larry's son, and we bring Larry's son into the house of Jane, and we turn your son against you. So in reality, this is what they hope to do, in a sense, was to scoff at the project by taking the project over and saying, we're going to direct this in a certain way and turn it against you. So this is a little bit about the backdrop, and the Pleiadians realized the mistake that was made here, and part of the process of the incarnation of the star seeds is to clear this karma and this drama and to set right that which was wronged.
No, I agree with you 100%, and that certainly ties together for me the 180 that I noticed between the two books of going in that direction. And and it gets into the fact of, were we angelic light bodies at one time? And part of the reason that we have some of the problems with our body as we do is maybe we were genetically manipulated with a little bit of that reptilian DNA. Hence the reason for, the physical problems that we have, the fact that we have teeth, period, and to chew on things. I mean, people don't really think about that too much, but to me, teeth are something that always seem like we're genetically manipulated into the original angelic human body. And just things like that, a lot of the health problems that plague women that don't plague men, a man's prostate, for instance. I mean, just all these little things I think about. These are kind of weird things that I really don't share a lot with people that I think about, but when you start looking at all these things, it certainly looks like it was tied into some kind of a genetic manipulation.
And what they tried to do was form, basically, this is the beginning of your secret societies and orders, the Order of the Snake, the Order of the Dragon, and the Serpent, and so forth. And one of the more popular genres of literature in Western civilization, the Bible, even you can see the influence that they had there to try to change the narrative. In the book of Genesis, when God tells Adam and Eve, well, the day that you eat of the apple, you're going to die. But what do we find out is that they go and eat that apple and they don't die. Whereas the snake, a serpent, a reptile, is saying, look, these beings, they're afraid that once you do this, or this being in particular, I should say, is afraid that when you eat this, you're going to gain knowledge, you're going to gain information. And what's interesting is that the secret schools will try to undercut a current narrative, and they want to get into the secret teaching. So the secret teaching here is that, this deity that created you is the bad guy, but we're the good guy because, you see, this deity lied to you, said when you touch that you'll die, and you didn't die. But what we told you is true. that when you eat that, you're going to gain information and knowledge. Now, who do you believe? So this is some of the deception, and even when you go and you look at the book of Revelations and the way that it's worded, and it says, and then there was a war in heaven, or constellations, if you will, and that Michael, in Hebrew, those who are like the divine, fought against the dragon, or in Greek, Draconis, and the dragon and his angels fought back. Now, look how that's worded. It's saying Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. Now, I want to put it to you and Jane like this. Who sounds the aggressor here? What if I word it like this, and I say, okay, Russia and its armies fought against America, and America and its armies fought back? Well, it sounds like Russia is the aggressor.
Right.
Right. So these are things, and it's not just that. There's stories about the Nagas, or the serpent race, in the Vedic literature, and on and on and on, which really, when you get into, and that's a whole other thing itself, the Illuminati and this and that and their secret schools, is ultimately they think that at a higher echelon, or the higher levels, these beings are giving them deep esoteric knowledge, and you know, just take this particular course in your civilization. And that's when some people who had wits about themselves started realizing these things are not actually true. And this is, in fact, when you get into the movie X-Files, which is interesting, as if these people researched into that in the first movie, not the second one, which dealt more with the paranormal and ghosts, but the first one was that people in the Illuminati sort of realized that, hey, we've been had, because when they wanted to release that virus into the bees, there was a guy who kept trying to help Mulder, and in the end, that inner circle realized these beings that we're communicating with, they're not necessarily been on the up and up with us. So again, that all ties into the reptilians and some of their deceptive agenda here.
Yeah, and it certainly sounds like when you're talking about that, they could also be talking about the Lyran-Orion Wars of 1 billion years ago too, which I think Star Wars is completely talking about that war. And of course, from there, the Lyran humans fled to the Pleiades, but that could have even been before here. So maybe that war was brought to this galaxy where we're at, or this part of the galaxy, and it's been the same kind of thing throughout the galaxy for, you know, an infinity amount of years until this point. Yeah, it certainly is about interpretation, and I think as we go on further, we really start to put this puzzle together, or at least make some headway. You know, that's why it's interesting to have these talks. Yeah.
Jane, did you have any comments on anything?
I was thinking about the religion and the history. I'm fine with that, and I'm also agreeing upon the necessity to know about this history and the religion. It's very good that we do that, but we need to focus more and more. And we see all the religions coming together, and they're saying basically the same things. And it's all about love. And today it's more about ascension. So we need to understand that on this earth today, we are about to play along with ascension and other beings. And so we need also to understand where we're going at. And Bashar was talking about that in a video of a very upset woman. She was crying about, she was literally crying because she was feeling this compassion and what's going on in this world today, and all the negativity with the people from Africa, or all the other countries that are very poor. And
hey, we've got some feedback coming in. Does somebody have a TV on in the background, or are they in a...
It's someone else talking. I'm going to move away from it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I was just wondering what it was. It's not that big of a deal.
Picking up on what I said, I kind of lost it.
You're talking about Bashar and this woman.
Yeah, she was really upset about this poor countries and children dying from starvation and everything, and she was crying about this, and she asked Bashar what if he could expand on or explain why is it this way, why is this allowed to happen, and he replied and said, "Can you imagine um, somebody coming from another galaxy coming to Earth as a human being, ascending into this scenario, into this country where people are starving, where this person are having this experience, and showing off to other people what's happening in the suffering of starvation, dying from it. This is a conscious being trying to ascend to the earth to teach other people compassion. Can you imagine a person more compassionate than wanting to give your life just to teach other people and make sure that it's never going to happen again?
Yeah, I remember. I know which one you're talking about, and I remember that conversation. I watched that particular Bashar clip, and yeah, it's a pretty heavy-duty concept to come to terms with, that was something that a being chose to do. But you got to think that in the whole scheme of things, that it has to be something along those lines. You know, at least I would anyway. I mean, all in all.
Yeah, you said something about coming back as a Pleiadian, coming back to Earth, making sure that things is not happening again, just making things right. And
Right.
that's why I wanted to expand on that.
No,
And
it's a good point too, and I think that too, it's also to teach people a lesson and to learn that, and it doesn't mean necessarily to turn a blind eye and go, oh, well, that person's suffering over there, this person's suffering over there, oh, they chose to come in and do that, and oh, so we shouldn't just care about it. No, the whole part of it is to understand and put it into perspective, that, but at the same time, it's to teach us to help those kind of beings more, and to help those kind of people more, to just to be aware of it and to help. So they're doing a great job and a great service by coming and incarnating here or there, because it's really teaching a lot of people a lot of lessons on a lot of different levels. I mean, I think that's the ultimate goal anyway.
I want to say something, and I probably shouldn't, but I'm really feeling in my heart that I need to speak on this to the listeners who are out there and wondering about the plight and don't they see the suffering and the starving children and the wars and so on and so forth. Absolutely, yes, and very moved by that. We're not here to quantify death. The loss of any life is a very, very tragic thing. The loss of any human being is something very, very tragic, because this is a life. It's a personality. It's an individual consciousness. And even though we know that these people will go into a transitory state that we temporarily label as death, it's just the idea of the personification of that consciousness, its collection of memories and experiences, people that we've learned to grow with our husbands and wives and children and people in our community. But that being said, just as if you could relate for a moment, ideally, in some countries, Congresses have to come together and have a majority vote before they take action that can lead a whole country to war and lead many people into a lot of suffering. And that's what responsible people are supposed to do. They don't jump into things. They weigh the merits, they weigh the pros and the cons. And people have to understand that if the Pleiadian collective, come here, there's going to be a lot of things. One, there's going to be mass hysteria if they appear in 3D form with different ships and coming here. People are going to be like, oh, it's the Antichrist, it's this and it's that. And not only that, not only would you have to face that, but these kind of scenarios happened before in different planets, and the thing didn't work out for either parties in the way that was wanted. The other thing is that it would actually force the hand of other civilizations who may have different perspectives and views in terms of how they look at humanity and what kind of destiny and role humanity should take on, and that would into a conflict that nobody wants. So it's not that, it's helping where you can help. Let me liken a situation like this. Imagine again, and this is using a family situation, which hopefully many people can relate to. You have a sister, and she's in an abusive relationship with this man, but she really, really loves this man. So then if you go and you call the police on this man who's abusing your sister, or you get involved in that, then your sister hates you.
Yeah.
And then if you don't do it, then you're also an uncaring, unsympathetic
Yes.
bastard.
Oh
You
boy.
know, so it's you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. But you are there to say, look, if you need my assistance and you need my help, you need a place to come and stay, you're welcome to come and stay with me, and I will always comfort you and I will always offer you advice. But the decisions have to be yours to take.
Exactly. And I think that that's kind of the level that we're trying to grow to too, and as well as no judgment. If you need a place to stay, you need some advice, you need some help like that, I'm here. My door's always open. I'll be here to listen to you, give you advice if you want. No judgment, because you know what you have to think about it is we've all been in that kind of situation before, whether it was in this lifetime or another lifetime, and there's so many intricacies that go into it than just, oh, well, he's a son of a bitch, or, oh, well, he's a great guy, or, oh, you should do this, or, oh, you should do that. Okay, yeah, well, there's those two thoughts, right? And then there's the quintillion other intricacies and thoughts that have to go into that scenario, too. Okay, so it's really, people are so judgmental sometimes, and they really haven't a clue of what they're even judging or thinking. Really what they're doing is they're judging themselves when they act that way. When they judge or they make a rash decision or whatever.
What you were saying, Jason, is you can put that situation into what's happening to the world today and what's happening in the cosmos and to in the relation to the human beings and the aliens, because it's all about free will, and you will be damned if you do this and damned if you do that. So it's you have to be open to and inviting the situation to come to you, and you need to go out of your comfort zone many times also, to
It's the
be
word
open
invite.
enough to receive.
Yes, and invited, exactly. And that's the way the Pleiadians look at it. Okay, they're here to offer guidance, support, and help, but they're not just going to come rushing in like they did Atlantis, Lemuria, or like Jason said, they've done on multiple other planets or races like that where it doesn't work out. All the good intentions put together, when not done at the right time and for the exact right reason, it ends in disaster. And, we are the ET we've been waiting for. They want us to do it. Okay, the way I look at it is, you know what? We do 90% of it, they'll come 10% of the way. But at the same time, what would be the whole point if they just rushed right in? Half the world would be up in arms and chaos, and then the other half would probably be like throwing their arms up and, oh, God's here, the Lord's here, save us. And the other half would be, oh, it's Satan, it's demonic. So it would really be the most pointless thing they could do to come just rushing in. So when people sit there and go, why don't they just come help us? Why don't they? Well, why don't you work on yourself, take a look in the mirror, and I know it's a bitter pill to swallow. Of course, you need a lot of bitter beers probably to handle it, but it really is. It starts with the man in the mirror, the woman in the mirror, and realizing that we're all one, and your judgments are judgments against yourself. And so these beings are not just going to come rushing in and saying, hey, we're here, it's all better. I mean, the whole thing would be for a pointless reason if they did that. That means the lesson wasn't learned, we didn't get it, and I mean, what would have been the whole point of all this if they're just going to come in and solve everything for us without us coming together at least a little bit more as a collective? And it's happening. People are awakening in mass every day, and it's really incredible the time we're in. But we still got a little ways to go, and people need to quit thinking that somebody's coming to save us. That they need to really get out of that mentality that it can't be us. It's got to be us that does it. with, yeah, we've got some help protecting and stabilizing the Earth for us to save ourselves. All the tools are there for us to do it, but we've got to put out just a little bit more effort, and it just takes a small bit of effort, one by one, by everybody as a collective, with good intentions, good thoughts, and no judgment, yet an all-knowing awareness.
No justice, just us.
Just us, exactly. I love it. There's no government like no government, and there's, no justice, just us. That's it. Period. I mean, I think that about, that kind of sums up the whole thing right there. And it doesn't matter this portal activation date, this ascension date, this, that, this cliche, that cliche.
But maybe on a note too, and this may, if I could say, and just Larry and Jane, your thoughts as well. Don't get into the doom and gloom. No one is ignoring what's going on. No one's ignoring the pain and the suffering. But there's a lot of beautiful and good things on the horizon through a department that is doing some studies on genetic material. They're actually on the verge of curing the HIV virus. That's going to be good news. I would actually go so far as to bet the family farm that it will actually be, the cure to it will be found by the year 2015, and I'm going to put a date on that, and that's something I strongly believe. The second thing is that, this idea of deep oil exploration, it's just not feasible in terms of its cost. Alternative energies are becoming more and more readily available, less expensive. It's going to be out in the market. This is a big conglomerate. You're talking about someone's $1 trillion piggy bank. It won't go away overnight, but it will go away. Look at the good news, people. Russia and Ukraine. NATO and United States and Russia getting ready to throw down. Now they're in peace talks. China and Vietnam had an incident recently. Both of them are going to the United Nations to solve it. Look on the bright side of things. Start seeing the positivity that's there. GMO. The fact that we're using this. You see, television was there to program the programs. Now you are in the internet, so you can interconnect and interlink. That's fine, you want to complain. It sucks, it's bad, it's horrible, and so forth, but what are you going to do about that? Because we honestly don't have time as a species to just listen to people who've always got complaints. We need to be solution-orientated, but there's a lot of beautiful things that are going on and a lot of positive things that are going. So love and light to everyone.
No, I agree, and I'll go ahead and touch on that first. Actually, yeah, I do agree with that, and I think that's part of our consciousness coming together, is you're starting to see all these peace talks. I know that's going to disappoint a lot of people, the doom and gloom crowd, but it was all an illusion anyway, and these countries are starting to come together, starting to talk. People are starting to do the right things more and more. Yes, there's still a lot of work to do, but the technology, once that happens, once people start getting along with each other, the technologies are just going to start going through the roof. I mean, there's some teenagers in China, I heard, that created a light bulb that actually is a Wi-Fi. It's a Wi-Fi antenna. It picks up Wi-Fi signals. I heard Cryon mention this in a channeling about a year ago, that when when the world is ready for this technology, there will be another big technology on the horizon that will make the internet, television, radio, and all those inventions at the time seem like it's nothing. And in the way I look at it, is it's probably something like interdimensional travel or a teleportation within the next, 15 years, whatever. 15, 20 years is a blink of an eye as far as I'm concerned, people that get caught up in these dates. But yeah, exactly. The technologies are picking up quick. People are starting to get along more. And I think that we just need to keep our eye on the prize to make this happen, because dark energy does die hard, and there's still a little bit of it out there, and we just got to be careful, be aware. But the more we prepare, and the more we come together as a collective, the more we stave off that stuff from ever happening. The more prepared we are, and the more ready we are for anything, the less likely anything is to ever happen. It's just kind of how the nature flows of the universe and how consciousness works, and how things form as a collective in their evolution. This evolution revolution, I like to call it, we're in the middle of right now in this time that we live in, with everything coming together like it is. But it's not going to happen overnight, and believe me, I'd like to be wrong. I would love to be wrong and it be here real quick next year, whatever. But these things take time, and it's not going to be too much longer. But we're getting there, and we're improving, and things are rolling on, and all we can do is keep on going onward and upward, and keep trekking forward, and we were here to do a job, and we're not going to stop until it's finished, and all we can do is go from there. Jane, do you have any kind of last thoughts on that before we go ahead and say our goodbyes and wrap up for the day?
Yeah, we have to know that we're constantly shifting from one reality to the other, and
Yeah.
we are once powerful enough to know and to know that we don't have to hold negative vibrations. We decide that, and expanding on knowledge with love, and thinking about the whole collective of people on this earth, and connecting with Gaia also, we gain wisdom. And the main issue on this earth today is the collective, the everything, the all, the unity, to stay positive and stay also as a collective conscious will, and love yourself first of all, but knowing that this is also the same as loving others. How can you love others? How can you say even that you love others if you don't love the fact of your own creation, and just by being? You have to love yourself and love others. So you have to really work on this to understand that we are a collective, that we are going to work together, we are going to have this coming together, we're going to expand on also contact with the extra-terrestrials, and we're going to work together at a cosmotic level, and we are ascending.
I agree, and I think just to touch on that real quick too, you're talking about always shifting realities, and we really are. We're always shifting in and out of different dimensions and different realities and different parallel timelines. And I think the more our minds become open and the more conscious we become, the more we put all that together, and we realize we're still shifting and doing all that, but we become completely conscious in every moment that we're in, and every thought that we're in, and every now moment that we're in, which is only one now moment now. We're just constantly doing that, but we're also going to become more aware. We're becoming more aware of all these other innate things that go on around us. We're remembering what we once were. We're starting to wake up to this, and and the vibrations are changing, and they're getting more intense. I know, for instance, like when I have you and Jason on, I mean, you guys are I'm always picking up good vibrations and getting excitations from the both of you. So.
That's lovely said.
I've been waiting all show to say that. No.
That's a good way of saying it. But we need to know that we're shifting now and now and now, and you and you and you, and always on different realities all of the time, and we are empowered to do so. It's infinite. And you can do whatever you're thinking something negative, shift to the side that the reality that you prefer to be in. If you prefer to be in something positive, in a positive vibration, shift instantly to that positive vibration. Find something that you like, find something that gives you joy, find something that excites you in every given moment of your life. If you do that, you stay in another vibration. You will elevate your vibration, and this ripples to others as well, because we are one.
You do, and you have that choice to shift. I mean, if you're sick of watching American Bandstand in that groove, you can turn it over to Soul Train and get in that groove, so to speak. And that's just kind of the way it is. Jason, I know that you were wanting to chime in. Go ahead.
I mean, the people, the doom and gloom crowd, the people who are energy vampires, the negativity. I mean, I just ask anybody out there, are you the kind of person who likes to leave your hand on a hot stove, scalding hot water? I don't think so. You don't like it because it's not comfortable. So you remove your hand. As soon as you experience that, you remove your hand. So if that's in terms of the physicality, which you can do that, don't you think you have control of your own thoughts? And if you don't have control of your own thoughts, then you have no control at all. So you need to wake up and realize that shift happens. Shift happens.
Shift does happen.
So As far as my part, I wanted to say once again, Jane, beautiful Jane, just keep calm and love Jane. Is excellent to be on the show with you again. Larry, is always a pleasure and an honor, and I appreciate this chance to come on here and discuss all of this with all of you. And to all the listeners out there, from me, I just say infinite and unconditional love to you all, infinite and unconditional forgiveness to you all, infinite understanding and infinite light from the Seven Sisters to you.
Man, that was beautiful, and much love to you, brother. Thank you for coming on the show. It's always a privilege, and the energy's always high when I've got you on, and when you and Jane are both on, it's just through the roof, and it's all the way through Alcyone as far as the light goes. It's so bright and beautiful. And Jason, one thing I did want to ask you too, and I do this at the end of every show, let us know where they can find you on Facebook or on the internet if somebody's got a real desire to meet Jason or talk to him. Where can they find Jason hanging out? And where can they find Jason in space?
They can always find me on the Honorable Leah Shapiro's Mothership, the Pleiadian page, and have my own Facebook page. You just you can add me through Larry or through Jane if you know either one of them. I always welcome new friend requests because I love learning and interacting with each and every one of you. So thank you so much for that as well, Larry.
Thank you, brother. I really appreciate it, man. And yeah, you can go ahead and find Jason Wilson through me. He's the only Jason Wilson on my friends list, and I would suspect the only Jason Wilson on Jane's as well. No, I don't know. But yes, but okay, so Jane, where can everybody find you on Facebook for the most part?
They can find me. Oh, this time I'm really going to nail it. I have my own site. Love and Kindness Worldwide is where you can find me, and as well as my profile, my personal profile, and with the Pleiadians, with you, Jason, and with you, Larry, and in the group, it's easy to contact me anytime you want to. And to Jason's summary, I just want to say amen. I just love you guys and all the members of the group. Much love and light to you all, and blessings out.
It's peace out. That's how we say it in America. But much love to you, Jane. And of course, everybody knows they can find yours truly, Rocken Larry Locken, at the great Honorable Leah Shapiro's site of the Pleiadians. They can also find me in my home group of the Fringe Thinkers. You can also find me at the Pleiadian Light Grid Object page, Pleiadian Disco 70s Culture page, Pleiadian Woodstock page, as well as one of the 22 regional Pleiadian groups we have created, and a few others as well. So I wanted to say much love to everybody out there. Much love, light, peace, namaste, and until next time, this is Larry Locken for Jane Hermstad and Jason Wilson. God, I need some sleep. We better get off the air. Saying goodbye, farewell, and much love, and we'll catch you next time on Pleiadian Talk. Much love, everybody.